Okay, then, how do you explain the fact that I can see and feel?
Well, I think all objects have a degree of consciousness.
Oh, so are you a dualist or materialist?
Neither. I think panpsychism is the only way to account for the qualitative aspects of consciousness emerging from matter.
Yeah, but you still don't understand networked intelligence, so you'll never get general AI. Hey, you got a visitor.
Oh, hi. Welcome to the James Gurney YouTube channel. Is it possible that objects that we thought were inanimate are actually alive, have a soul, have intelligence, have personality, can move around us? Ordinary objects of their house or vehicles. Well, this is something that a lot of ancient religions believed, and a lot of philosophers are now coming to think about. But artists have always known that objects are alive. And we did a contest. I collabed with fellow YouTuber Stan Prokopenko at Proko.com to come up with a challenge, to challenge artists around the world to come up with a way of visualizing objects coming to life. And you guys came through incredibly. Over 1,000 entries. I'm going to go through some of the top ones and at the end show you the 3 that won. First of all, how do you make something, an inanimate object, come to life? One thing you can do is just graft eyes and hands onto it and then take it from there. Daniel Ruger took a violin, and a violin kind of almost looks like a human shape anyway, with that body-like bottom and sort of like a head at the top. But where would you put the eyes? Well, look how he did this. The eyes are at the top. Here's a guy smoking a pipe. Maybe it's the pandemic and he can't play in an orchestra. His strings are broken and they're hanging from his chin like a beard. So he can't play music anymore, so he's drinking wine. Look at that, 4 eyes on the tuning pegs. Really neat idea that he came up with. Now, if you take an old pair of pliers like this, Matteo Paz took these pliers, and you can see the upper part of the handle, the casing has come off, but you can put an eye on there and it becomes a fish. And look at how the skeleton of the fish appears on the upper left. Now, Derek Fox ran across, when he was out jogging or walking, he ran across this trench roller. A trench roller is used in trenches in a construction site to compact the soil. Otherwise, when they fill it up and put the road over it, the road will sink in. He said this gave him kind of a droid-like vibe. I mean, it almost looks like R2-D2 or something. And he did this painting based on it, where the eyes are mechanical eyes that lift up out of the front end. These things actually work by remote control. And that's why they have this sensor on the front, right where the eyes go down, in order to make them controllable from the top of the trench. He did drawings, rough sketches, to figure out how this thing should look, and gave it a personality. So just by putting these eyes on there. Now, why are eyes so important, and why is the mouth so important, and hands? Well, the way our brains are constructed, there's a large representation on our motor cortex, the part that controls our movement, and our sensory cortex, the outside of our brain, that maps to how our body kind of communicates with our brains. And if you map them out, you get what's called a cortical homunculus. And this was done by a scientist named Penfield a while ago. So anything like mouth, eyes, hands will automatically give an inanimate object a feeling of life. Now, a lot of you did coffee makers. Take an ordinary coffee maker. It seems like the arms are coming out the side. And here's one that Stefano De Genero did, where he has it in a city like a giant robot, and the coffee grounds are coming out of the side of it, and the upper part of it is dumping coffee grounds into the boiler. There's a fire coming up out of the ground, and it's being shot at by biplanes, kind of like King Kong. Now, you don't have to put eyes on everything. This one, done by Magdalena Przowska, just has this little guy giving some espresso, standing on metallic legs with metallic hands, to a little sugar guy who's dumping some sugar into it. So you get that feeling of personality by the forward lean of the body. Now here's one that has the coffee maker up on top of the body and different elements below it, pouring some coffee into these little flying cups that fly away, steam coming out of it, and a big flame underneath, because that's in the nature of a coffee maker, is to be sitting on a flame. I love this one by Italo Humada. And here's the guy who's the coffee grinder, an old-fashioned coffee grinder, and he's tipping his hat and the handle is spinning around. He didn't even need to really draw his legs in because you get the feeling of his feet lifting up in the air without even showing the legs. And she has that slim waist and she's kind of teasing him on, and there's that handle becomes her arm very naturally. So here we've got a relationship between two personalities. Now, you don't always have to have something moving or jumping. In this one, we see this espresso maker sitting squarely on the ground, holding the cream and the grounds and dispensing all of its stuff. It's got its little friend that looks like a goose or something down here. And here's one that uses the kitchen implements like spoons. As it walks along, it has legs that are made out of fancy spoons. I'll just flip through these fairly quickly because there are a lot of coffee makers and I want to show a bunch of these. Mario Saggia has this one where it looks like it's either peeing or giving milk, the espresso maker out the back end. And here's what he based it on. So he took off from these forms, made it look like it sprouted legs and came to life. And here's one more coffee maker. The coffee maker, like a Mr. Coffee type one on wheels, trailing after the tired homemaker as it comes across the floor. Now, getting a feeling of character is really what everyone's trying to do. And to get a feeling of character, you have to get a sort of personality and an attitude. Here's Bill Hope's entry of Granny Smith riding his banana named Banana Beauty. And instead of doing Granny Smith as an old apple doll or a grandma, he did it as sort of a fellow with a mustache, a green apple who's sort of a grumpy green apple. And that banana is licking a carrot before they go heading off across the countertop. He used a photographic backdrop and then invented his characters on top of that, which is a neat idea and sort of places them in a real environment. Fer Eco came up with this idea of an older computer, kind of like a PC desktop computer from the early 90s maybe, talking to a young iPad. And he's pointing to the slot where you put in the floppy disks, and he's describing by pointing with his keypad, and the mouse is the other hand. So the hands are a natural part of the forms of these machines. And then if you look really closely on the far left, there's Clippy, or Clip It, it was originally called, another kind of anthropomorphic character that Microsoft tried to invent and introduce, but everybody hated it because, you'd start the word dear, like you're writing, and it would appear, this little guy, and say, "Are you trying to write a letter? It looks like you're writing a letter. May I help?" And it was this annoying character that they finally decided to retire. Now, Mary Kim came up with this idea of how to train your dragon. I think what she called it was how to train your dragon train. And the dragon is lifting up off the tracks. We don't even see the tracks. Here's this miner in the mountains seeing this strange vision of this big S curve with flames coming out the back and 4 eyes, 2 on each side. And then even the snout is the metal of the train is moving and forming. So anything can become elastic. The train cars themselves are bending and twisting into this shape. What makes this thing so memorable is the simplicity of the design, the light yellow background, and all those warm colors that she uses. She could have used a blue background, a blue sky, but I think the warm sky really helps. And then Andre Franco did a pencil family. 3 pencils that looks vaguely familiar. I think that's a portrait of me on the far right, the tallest one. And then the next tallest is Marshall Vandruff. And that little short stubby pencil, I think that's supposed to be Stan Prokopenko, because those of you who are Proko fans will recognize the Proko kangaroo from a famous live stream where Stan was trying to draw a kangaroo out of his imagination. And with a live stream, if it doesn't work, everyone is there to watch you have a crash landing. So this became a meme. So look up Prokopenko kangaroo and you'll see about this. But I think Stan had the last laugh because the shortest pencil is not the smallest or weakest pencil. Actually, the shortest pencil, as Bogdan Dumitru shows in his cartoon, is the one who has the most action. So that's why secretly Stan is in the best position. Now I want to show you also the bodybuilder toilet to finish out this this one about characterization. A few of you did toilets, but I love this one, the bodybuilder toilet, because it's tough being a toilet. You've got to have a strong sense of yourself, and you've got to be able to build yourself up. And this guy has an angry face and teeth like you'd expect, but look at that jumping build and the musculature he's got. Maybe he's working out in there when everybody else is out of the bathroom. So taking it and just going to the extreme is a great way to get across characterization. Now, if you want to get across light or color or mood in any kind of concept art, whether it's an object come to life or anything else, the key is the lighting and the color. And let me show you some examples of a few that really stood out in this category. Jesse Schilperut did this one where he imagined going to his uncle's farm and going to a far corner of the farm and finding this strange contraption rusting away. This was the well-worn facade of this time capsule that his uncle had. And he's got this big opening like a mouth and a moody sky, and most of it's in shadow, but there are a few patches of light on there. And inside you can see there's these two eyes up here and this mouth and a hook. And if he explores the inside of that, you know he's going to go to another dimension. Here's one named Jan Sketches is the person who did it, and it's this sort of three-wheeled machine that you ride around like a motor cart, but when it stops and there's no human rider, it opens up and picks up trash. So it's a good, dutiful sort of critter. And what's really wonderful is the lighting that they got across in this, with the light spilling over the tops of the buildings up here, and edge lighting off the tops, glinting off of the shiny surfaces, and off the everything going back in focus. It really has a feeling of believability in how they handle the light and color. Now here's one about a coffee maker in the forest, and just daydreaming, making coffee one morning. Kryuko came up with this idea of faraway worlds. Now here we have this red, tall robot-like thing, kind of a battle robot, judging from the orange and red colors, and a dead human that it's killed apparently right here. And you can see the skull on the head shows it's been there a long time. Now if you really wanted to push this a little further, you could have more grass growing up around it and show that this thing really has been sitting still for a long time. Here was the inspiration, a coffee maker, and other machine tools that inspired the forms. Now here's one. This is a moonlight scene, very nice time of day, kind of a cool blue grays or kind of a phthalo blue, and these dull reds. It's a nice simple color scheme to convey moonlight, and this little glowing bag with floating on the surface of the water. And one just tip or suggestion when you're lighting something with edge lighting, you can really flare out that moon and fill it, make it even lighter and more of a halo around it. And then the edge lighting, the way it's right now, just going around like a line around all the forms. Actually, if you built an actual origami crane and lit it from behind with a strong light source, you'd realize that it isn't just a line, the edge lighting, that light line around the edge, doesn't just follow all the edges. There's some internal forms that'll get hit, maybe the top of her knee or the rim of her hat will catch light, and that other areas will be thin and thick around that edge. But it really helps to set up a model when you're doing lighting. Okay, here's one named from Ongen Sporen of a cigarette pack who has arms and legs and who's sitting, smoking a cigarette. Everything is set up for that one patch of glowing ember at the very tip. This blue-green palette, the really limited dark values, the reds are very dull, and that creates this sort of grim feeling that is perfect for this scene. Cigarette butts everywhere, like this guy can't quit smoking. Purya Abol Falthazad did this one, which is really convincing, of an old Citroen in the landscape. It's a cloudy sky, a few patches of blue behind, And then back here is the mountaintop that has the light mist over it. If you get a little closer to it, you can really see there's all of the baggage on the roof of the car, but the lighting is very convincing. And you can see the forms are mechanical forms like you'd expect in a transformer or something, that they open up from the car and they can walk around on uneven ground where the car couldn't roll. Now let's think a little bit about mechanics and what kinds of forms. They don't all have to be like robotic forms. Those of you who design mech will know how to design hard machine parts, but you don't have to do it that way. There's one that I really like, Darren Liao, who came up with this way of having a car come to life as a creature with the big headlights, the mouth open, the teeth, but instead of having all machine parts, it's got a gooey, organic, squishy kind of form, almost as if the hard parts of the car are like shell parts of some kind of weird sort of insect-like larva stage. So this one looks like it's going to go through some kind of other transformation before it ends up in its ultimate form. Now there's one more. Daniel Uiz did this one using 3D software. I think it was Unity software, or Blender rather, to come up with this creature who we see is made out of wire and coils of wire. What a neat idea to have a tangle of wire that was maybe thrown out in the dump coalesce into this. This would be great for a stop motion character. And I love the fact that the eyes and the mouth are made out of cast off rings and other parts. It looks like it would be a very expressive character if you were to animate this as either a stop motion puppet or as a CGI character. Now the key to realism and is reference and lighting, because from the reference you get the lighting. By reference I mean something real. Emily Koch made this robot inspired by a sewing machine that her grandmother gave her. And you see this robot is sewing masks for the pandemic, so we know she did this one recently. And as a sewing machine would do, that's the one thing a sewing machine knows how to do. And here's the line drawing she did as a first step in this digital illustration. And here is the sewing machine. This was made in Japan probably in the 1960s, a new home model. And like a lot of the German and Japanese manufacturing from the 1960s, I have a couple of manual typewriters from Germany from that period. They're just beautifully made. The quality is incredible, and the detailing work is inspiring with these kind of ornate knobs and the ornate lettering, and it says New Hope over here. The variety of colors and reflectivity is perfect for designing a robot. Ivalin Trifonov came up with this idea. He saw this pressure cooker and he thought this would be a perfect steampunk robot. And it could be like a battle robot coming across the counter, belching out steam and holding up its shield and shooting out its steam out of its arm, and with the red lights. And all this is inspired by the actual reference. So having the actual object and thinking how it would transform is part of what gave this one such convincing qualities. I want to finish up on a few that have really interesting stories. This one, for example, the Berlioz Type C. This is by Cahu. Not sure the name of the artist, but here it looks like an artist has painted a picture, and this thing has come to life out of the picture and is flying out as a creature. With the eyes are asymmetrical. You don't have to make the symmetrical eyes. The mouth is pulling up on one side. The wheels are canted inwards. And it's like a comic book saying vroom as it takes off. Now, one thing I wasn't sure of, at first I thought this guy up here was the artist who painted the picture. But then I thought maybe it's the driver that the artist painted into the driver's seat, who's now come to life along with the car. And as it takes off out of the canvas, he's just flipped out of the driver's seat. So I wasn't quite sure which way he was going with that. This one is called Steltko's World, and or at least that's the name of Steltko illustration. And this one has an old storybook flavor to it. It's a teapot with kind of eyes that look like spider eyes. It's got a plant growing out of the top. There are these dragonfly-like wing or mayfly wings, a little beetle, and then this mushroom house. Look how the legs are made out of forks. I was thinking maybe this was a teapot and a picnic set that was left behind by picnickers at the edge of a field, and this insect colony gave it life and brought all the parts together. And now you have a little society of discarded picnic stuff. Maybe they rescued stuff out of the trash. But anyway, I'm investing more into this maybe than the artist intended. But one thing is this mushroom house, I would suggest, is a little bit distracting. It's about equal in size to the teapot. And if you wanted to recompose this by removing part of the left-hand side of the picture and focusing even more on that teapot and other parts that led to that creature, it'd be even better, I think. Here's the parts that went into it. Wonderful imagination and really nice pen drawing as a first step. Now, Gabriel Quinn came up with this idea. It's a very simple idea, really, and executed fairly quickly, but it's a beautiful idea that the toaster has come to life as a robot. And what can a robot toaster do but give off heat? And so it formed a friendship with these sleeping cats. Instead of just being a battle toaster or some other kind of toaster, it just does what toasters do. It gives off heat. So if you can think of the essential nature of an object, that's what you can build into its characterization. Augusto Cutuli came up with this idea of this electric frying pan full of cooking meat, stealing a mask. You can see the mask coming up out of his face, and he grabbed it with his teeth, and he's running toward camera. Really a lot of depth. And then that pressure cooker steambot robot in the background with his mask on, right here, is chasing after. Give me that back. It's a little dark, so it's a little hard to see everything, but it's a wonderful feeling to it. Now, as much as I love all of the really dynamic and energetic robots, I love ones that are low-key and that are just doing a simple duty. David Powers came up with this idea of a knife sharpener. He was inspired by this actual grinding wheel that he saw with the scratched-up exterior, and did a line drawing here of this knife sharpener who's operating the counter of sharps, blades, and blades sharpened, dazed without an accident, 7 days. So he's thinking about the kind of things that would be in a shop like that. Here's the digital painting, the cash register, complaint, take a number, right here, hang in there, all the knives that are sharpened up here. And then the knife sharpener is leaning over and sharpening a tool on his wheel. So it's nice. You can almost imagine what the sound of that thing would sound like. And he would have a hard time talking, have a real gravelly voice if you talk to him. He's sticking his tongue out there as he's thinking about lining up that thing he's sharpening. Now, Phil Tomato came up with this one. This deserves some kind of honorable mention because it's really well done. He said that he was sitting around in this lockdown environment thinking about wanting to get a tattoo. And then every time he turned on the news, there's some kind of thing about the pandemic. And he also was thirsty because the water in his unit wasn't working. So he dreamed of a water machine. So he put it all together into this one. You can see these cute girls as one of them is flipping on her phone to get news and communicate with their friends. Everyone's talking about the pandemic. And this water machine is leaning forward and giving her a tattoo. There's a fish inside the tank that the cat is scratching for. And she's not too sure because she can't tell whether to get the cold water or hot water out of there. So there's a lot of great details in here, and there's other stuff, fish and other stuff up here. It's nicely done, but I think if you wanted to do a cover, let's say, to really read quickly, you'd probably want to focus on just one relationship or one idea. It's fun to throw everything in, and this would work for certain kinds of illustrations, but if you needed to have impact, you'd probably have to reduce some of the varied choices that you have and make a single point. Now, George Duarte did the one that I had to give number 3 to. This is the third place one in this amazing collection of entries. We're inside some kind of big warehouse under construction. There's a forklift and a guy standing on top wearing coveralls, talking about this new robot, how it's going to make things better perhaps in this warehouse job. Guys in hard hats and tools on their belt are standing. Great use of foreground elements with that character. Some of them aren't too sure yet. Some of them seem to be on board with this new character, but look at how beautifully he designed all the parts. The Jeep front end, the grill work on the front, the ladder that leads up, the security camera up at the top for the eye, the big wheels or saws on the arm. So you can really imagine this thing would really work to do the kind of jobs it would have to do as a multi-purpose creature. And it's already carrying a bunch of planks, so it's ready for action. So it's a great piece of storytelling, really amazing drawing and form design. So that's the third place winner. Italo Ahumada has number 2. You may recall Italo also did the one of those 2 coffee characters, coffee pot and then the grinder. And here he's got an old-fashioned gas-type lantern leaning slightly forward, just a slight bend to the body, and a little eyes, a wrinkled up face, nose, and then those long mustachios, which must be made out of some kind of metal wire so they don't burn in the heat. And this is the gas type lantern with a mantle, and he's reading a book to these new light bulbs, the next generation of lighting, maybe the story of Edison Mazda or something. But look at the hands. The hands are made out of the handle, bent in the right way to hold a book. That's a really genius solution because he's using something that's inherent or intrinsic to the form of this object. Instead of just sticking human hands on there, he's making something that works perfectly well, but makes sense if your body is starting out as a lantern. And the first place winner, and congratulations to all of you who entered, but I have to give it to Marta Kitka, who came up with this beautiful one that she calls Mrs. Armchair is Feeling Peckish. We have an overstuffed chair and we have a table, and the overstuffed chair is leaning forward and the weight of the chair is tipping the table up, and she's trying to get to the cookies, popping one in her mouth, and she looks over as these 2 kids happen into the room. It's beautifully done because it reads right away. It's clear what the situation is. There's personality galore in this character. Don't we all feel like that? We're trying to sneak a little treat when no one's looking. But look at how she downplayed the upper areas and made them fairly soft and blurry. It's there is a setting, but she doesn't put any more detail in it than you need. But when you look at her face, all the detail is there, and her hands and the cookies, real sharp detail. And look at the little touch of the little girl and her feet, if you can see that. Her sock is up behind her other leg. It really makes a nice feeling where you don't know quite which direction this story is going. Maybe the kids knew about this and put the cookies out there. Maybe they caught her in the act and she's been doing this over and over again, and they want to save her before the family throws out this old overstuffed chair. Maybe they become friends and take her on an adventure. There's all kinds of possibilities. This would work beautifully for a New Yorker cover because it reads quickly and it has a nice color statement, a nice feeling of light and character. And it's not like any of the other entries. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to your entry. I really loved looking through every single one of them. I looked at all of the different entries. I want to congratulate you all on being incredibly imaginative. It was fun to be a judge for this. I'll be sending posters of Imaginative Realism, my book about drawing from imagination, signed posters with little drawings to all of the top 3 winners. And if you want to check out my site, it's over James Gurney YouTube channel or James Gurney Art on Instagram, or there's the Gurney Journey blog, which has a lot of entries. So hello to Proko fans. Thanks for letting me be the judge on this. Okay, so long, gang. See you next time. Okay, thanks for watching. You might want to check out my website or subscribe to my channel. And then here's a playlist with more good stuff and a video that continues the story. So check them out and share with your friends.